So in your scenario, talking about happy pigs, do you think it's perhaps happy animals? Do you think it's perhaps more of an injustice, killing an animal that wants to live possibly more than the animals in this situation?
Sorry, can you ask me that question again? Because it was
Absolutely.
an extraordinary question. Go on.
This past weekend, I took part in my first Cube of Truth. For those who aren't familiar, the Cube of Truth is similar to an Earthlings event with a different structure. So if you're curious about learning more, be sure to check out my debrief that I did on the Cube of Truth event itself. Now during the event, I recorded 2 different interviews. This is the first of them. During the interview, I learned that this individual had been farming for 57 years, and while we had different understandings and different beliefs, we managed to have an open exchange, which I think was really productive. He agreed to have the audio recorded, but preferred not to have his face recorded, so I've blurred his image to protect his identity. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy. Yeah, so I guess the question is, I mean, looking at some of the screens here, is,
I haven't done.
yeah, I mean, if you want to, you can see.
Smoke in your face.
Yeah, either or. Thanks for that, mate.
Pretty horrible.
Oh, sorry. So, like here, they're showing some of the pig farming. I don't know what you have experience with yourself.
I do.
So, what's been your experience?
Free range, open range, happy pigs. But people want to eat pork, so yeah, they'll farm it. But I certainly wouldn't do this. This is disgraceful. This I have a problem with.
So
Space. That is a sick pig. Oh, Jesus.
yeah, and I think that's why we're here today, because a lot of this isn't known about.
Oh yeah, I know about it. Take you to farms. I'm not going to do it, but most of those in this country has been shut down. But you wouldn't find that. That is truly gross. You don't. This isn't farming. This has got nothing to do with farming. In my view.
So what?
This is just abuse.
So what happened to the pigs on the farm that you've worked on in the past at the end of their life?
They get raised properly. They're happy pigs, so they are happy animals, and sheep and horses.
Are you with the pig? Are you with the pigs at the end of their life?
Am I what?
Are you with the pigs at the end of their life?
Am I with them at the end of their life? I know exactly what happens to them. I know which abattoir they're going to. I know how they're going to be treated in that abattoir. And it's all pretty humane. In fact, one of the most humane countries on the planet.
So, I guess, how would you humanely kill a pig, for instance?
How would you humanely kill?
Humanely kill a pig?
It will be electric shock straight in the middle of the head, instant, and it is instant. Immediately gets hung up, and it is dead already. Then it will be drained.
Do you think at the volume we're producing pigs, for instance, that they can do it consistently each time without any mistakes from the pig's perspective, and things don't go according to plan, for instance?
In proper abattoirs, yeah. This is not proper. Okay. This is abusive. It has very little to do with any sort of farming that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it does exist.
And
It exists a lot across Eastern, Southern Europe, and actually across America.
And my understanding is that this is the vast majority of the supply in the UK. It comes from something like this, not between 94 and 98%. I don't know if you have a different understanding.
I have a different understanding, and I have a different knowledge.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And no, I would say that is definitely not anywhere close to that sort of figure.
So what percent would you say is factory farm like this?
I wouldn't. It's so little, and I would come across that so rarely, having mixed with the farming community virtually all my life. All 57 years of it. Yeah.
So I guess you mentioned that the pigs have a happy life.
Let me put it this way.
Yep.
If I saw that on somebody's farm, I would be reporting them to the authorities, and not just the RSPCA, but to the Ministry of Agriculture. They would be shut down.
So in your scenario where your pig,
old pigs here?
It rotates around, so we've got chickens here.
Oh yeah, that is gross.
So in your scenario, talking about happy pigs, do you think it's perhaps happy animals? Do you think it's perhaps more of an injustice, killing an animal that wants to live possibly more than the animals in this situation?
Coastal communities that had...
Sorry, can you ask me that question again? Because it was
Absolutely.
an extraordinary question. Go on.
I guess my question is, you're mentioning happy pigs and that they have a happy life. I'm just curious, if compared to these animals, do you think those animals want to live even more, and possibly killing them is more of an injustice?
Well, you're talking fundamentally about whether you should actually eat pigs or not. If you didn't farm them, they wouldn't have a reason to exist, and therefore they would be wiped out. Now, if you look at old art of farm animals and how they look, what they look like, while they seem completely out of proportion, it is actually what they used to look like. So people will complain about genetic modification. Well, we've been doing genetic modification of animals and crops for nearly 1,000 years to maximise the availability of, let's face it, food. Right? We are carnivorous. We don't all choose to be carnivores, but we are actually carnivores, so people do eat. So if that is the problem, good luck with that train of thought, but carnivores will continue to eat meat, and they continue to need to be produced. We are getting to a stage where we're all actually going to be eating insects.
I have heard that as a theory.
It's not a theory, it's a reality.
Do you feel like there's a biological need for us to eat animals?
Yes. A biological need? No.
Specific nutrients.
Yes, of course.
So what nutrients do you feel like we need to eat animals for to survive?
I would rather eat properly than eat pills where I don't know where those chemicals.
I agree. I agree. Pills are not the answer.
I know where all meat that I eat, I know where it's come from. Not many people do. That's a straight reality of life. Just simply.
That's why we're here today, I think. Yeah.
They don't know where their food comes from. You go and talk to children in a school, and you show them pictures of pigs, and you take a lamb into the school and show them this is a lamb. Take them down to a farm where they're being bred beautifully, and you can go. Here you're the wrong side of the dance. You go to the other side of the South Downs, you will see real proper farming going on. When you go to the South England show at Ardingly, you will see the very best of British farming, most of which happens north of the Downs in this area. There are bad farmers, but when you say to me 90% of animals bred like this, you are completely deluded.
Okay.
It doesn't happen.
If you have resources to the contrary, I'd really like to hear that. That would be great to hear.
But you don't need the resources. You just need to go and see it for yourself. Just go to farms. I mean, those are a great place for pig farming. Here, Chichester. They're just north of Chichester. You've got a pig farmer who's producing a massive amount of pigs. Go and take a look at how he looks after it. And you can see it, both sides of the road. Beautiful pig pens, all out in the open. Pigs doing what pigs do. Rummaging around in mud, which they love.
Website, and there's lots of information.
A huge amount of British meat is bred there. You go over to Denmark, I'm not quite so sure.
Did you connect with any of the pigs or other animals when you were farming them? Did you connect with them? Bond with them, for instance? I guess because my understanding is that pigs are more intelligent than dogs, for instance. And I volunteered in an animal sanctuary, and there's a couple of pigs where I see the same ones every week and give them belly rubs, and they've started to come to know me. And I'm just curious if you've had a similar experience.
Well, of course. Yes, they're your animals. Ultimately, they're going they're there for a reason. I mean, but there are certain pigs, horses, sheep, whatever it is, that you're going to use for certain reasons. So, but when a bull or prize bull, who you breed from, is reaching the end of its usefulness, you've got two options. We've got three options actually. One, you can retire it and just let it be, which is my personal favourite, and just let it retire.
So does that mean it lives out its life?
Yeah.
How long do pigs live in your experience? In a farming setting.
Well, they'll have a good time for about 25 years if they want.
Yeah, because they live quite long, right?
Yeah.
So you'll let them live out for the full 25 years.
Well, if they, this sounds incredibly unfair. If they've earned it, yeah.
It's good to have an open exchange.
If they've earned it, yeah.
So how do they earn it?
By doing what they're there to do.
So if they stop doing what they're there to do, does that mean that's...
Yeah, because you cannot run a farm with animals that aren't productive, right? So the alternative is to not to farm them at all. And if you don't farm them at all, then they will die out.
So do you think pigs will go extinct if we don't farm them?
Will they go extinct? They probably won't go extinct, but they certainly won't be the numbers, and they will become endangered because they cost money to be.
Well, it's really interesting to hear your perspective. I think it's great that you're willing to talk about it. I think regardless
you're prepared to listen to me as well, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, does this?
Let me see this.
Yeah,
you show me now.
Just a bit of glare. Yeah, there you are. So this is often the byproduct, and I think this is kind of what we're talking about. Once the animals are no longer useful, they're just discarded as a byproduct of the industry.
Yeah, that again, that wouldn't happen like that. Because once it's served its useful purpose and you are going to have it destroyed, it still has value.
Did you find that?
So, for example, God, these are really grim pictures you're showing.
So you think these are obscure cases?
Yeah, I think people have worked at finding that.
I guess I have a different understanding. Looking at I think it's particularly in factory farms. I've spoken with a number of abattoirs that it's I don't know. It sounds like you've probably spent some time at abattoirs as well.
And glue factories.
It's my understanding.
Making sure that the benefit of once an animal is no longer productive in its farming sense, and it is going to be put down, destroyed. It still has value. All right. So the meat will go to something. The bones will go to a glue factory. I mean, who doesn't use glue? Who knew animal bones are the main constituent of every glue that all of us use?
Yeah, and that's a great point. And as long as we're living in a non-vegan world, I think it's very difficult to completely exclude that. I think the important thing is that we're doing what we can.
Yeah, that's fine. But we all want to wear leather shoes. We all want to...
Okay,
not today. Better?
I said vegan shoes.
Okay.
My job.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think there are a lot of considerations that, and some are very difficult to align perfectly on. But it's doing what we can. So, and I guess talking about destroying the animals at the end of their usefulness. Did you have any companion animals, any dogs or cats on the farm?
Yeah.
So would you consider doing that when a dog can no longer work the farm? Would you put it down?
No.
What do you think is different between a dog and a pig?
If it's a working dog, I can understand why people would do that, would just put it down.
You think that's okay?
I've never... Yeah, because it's a working dog. It's the same as a working horse. You know, once a Shire horse becomes a cost, you cannot afford, because you've still got to go and get another horse that's going to do the same job as that one was doing. Now I'm talking about kind of hilltop farming where tractors are still not used, where everything is done with horses still, and that happens throughout Europe. But when it's a working animal, yeah, I think farmers know what they're doing. Do they like that bit? No, not one bit. Do you think they enjoy having an animal put down because it's no longer serving a purpose? No, it's not an enjoyable thing. It's a necessity, and it actually helps to maintain the species. So when you said earlier, will pigs become extinct? I'm afraid I regard that as the most ridiculous question, because no, they won't. But there are several different breeds of pig. There are many different breeds of pig, and there will always be people who want to sustain them. Now, I'll give you a reasonable example. So, for example, a Gloucester black spot. Okay, beautiful pig. So he's like a black and white pig. Now, they're a really rare breed that very few farmers raise because they are very expensive to raise, and they're not the best for meat production. But there are still farmers that will specialise in that and just deal specifically with that. And you can name breeds right across the range. And it's the same with cattle. I mean, I could take you to a farm that's not 10 miles from here where he's raising buffalo. Water buffalo. I mean, they don't even come from this country. You know, but he's raising them. But they've got to be productive because he simply cannot afford to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. So if something kicks off in Africa and all the water buffalo, you've got herds here that you can help restock and you can maintain. I mean, I'm not going to kind of get into fox hunting with you, but what people don't understand is how and why fox hunting works. And it actually sustains a stronger population of foxes. What you end up with are sick foxes that only understand that their lunch comes from a bin liner. And they have no idea how to look after themselves in the wild. When town foxes, which are a very different species, are picked up by do-gooders who think, oh, well, let's put this fox in their country. A farmer who does not want a fox on his land can always spot the town fox. It'll be the stupid one that walks up to him, smelling him for a bin liner, because it has no idea, and it will be scraggy, it will be ill, it will be put down by the RSPCA if they see it. And so the easiest and best way to do it is to instantly shoot it, and you're doing it a favour. I used to do this in Italy with stray dogs who were sick, rabid dogs. If they came onto my land, they're going to do my livestock damage. And it's got to go.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's a lot of considerations out there. I guess what we're talking about today, given 98% of the way we use animals is our food, while these other, I think stray dogs are a big problem. As you say, wildlife.
90, but to turn around to me and say 90% of farming is like that is a joke. It's absolute hysterical.
So I'm referring to a different statistic. So I'm specifically saying if you look at all the ways we use animals. So we talked about leather, we talked about well, we haven't yet, but if you think about animal testing, the vast majority is for our food supply.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of these considerations you raise are really important. I think the food supply is one of the biggest.
Yeah, well, no, because it's not just the food supply, because every animal that goes through that process of the food chain. So once a carcass, you need to follow it through. So when you're in an abattoir and you're seeing a bull being broken down, by breaking down I mean having all the meat taken off.
Have you seen that personally?
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, the actual slaughter and through that process.
Yeah.
How did that experience kind of impact on you?
It's how it works. It's how.
Do you think if there's an alternative that should be considered? I'd say veganism.
What?
I would say veganism.
Well, good luck with that.
So, what's been your experience with veganism?
My experience of it, I'm really not going to go there. But
okay.
All right, because you can be a vegan, and you choose to be a vegan, and that's absolutely fine. But I choose not to be a vegan, and I'm quite happy with that.
Okay.
All right, and the majority or a very significant percentage of the global population would agree with me. Well, I'm quite happy for you to do that. I do not want to be sustained by vegetables alone, because we're all actually, like I say,
me neither. Brighton's a hub for vegan food. Everything, they've got vegan pizza, vegan ice cream, vegan yogurt, everything these days. So I agree. I don't want to eat just vegetables either. There's lentils, beans. I used to eat a very bland diet when I was an omnivore, and it's much.
We're all going to end up eating insects anyway. Like I said, I think we've come back to the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you taking the time to stop, because I think there's a lot of consideration. Like, it's going back to the insect thing real quickly. Do you think that the planet could be sustained if more of us were vegan?
No.
So
because there isn't enough land, fertile land, to grow it.
Do you think it takes more plants to feed animals versus eating the plants directly?
No. Straightforward, no.
Okay.
It's a little bit like the argument for, and I'm very much into energy saving, and it's the argument that says, well, I think we should really have an entire planet with biomass energy. Well, if you actually work out quite how much of the countryside you would need to grow the biomass to burn for the energy, there will be nothing left for you to eat your vegetables or for me to eat my animals, because there simply isn't enough land to do it.
Yeah, and land use is a very important consideration. There's, have you heard of the documentary Cowspiracy? The documentary called Cowspiracy?
No.
I appreciate you taking the time to stop. Let me give you a card.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've got an open mind, which is great. And honestly, if you find there's anything on these resources that is inaccurate, we'd like to know about that.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, so what was your name? Oh, thank you for stopping.
Cube of Truth?
Yeah, so there's the cube.
Okay.
Pleasure meeting you. You have a nice, lovely day. Thank you very much.
To my point of view as well, so that's cool.
Yeah, so that was the interview. During the interview, I assessed that this individual was likely in the pre-contemplation stage. I suspect they may have been in their contemplation stage during the farming career, and at some point have moved back to pre-contemplation, meaning that not really acknowledging that there's an issue that anything needs to be addressed or changed with. So I really just focused on building awareness on the what's happening to the animals, and briefly touched on other topics such as no biological necessity to eat animals, and also some of the land use concerns that were more in response to what he brought up. So I really focused on open-ended Socrates-style questions, really just trying to help us both think and have an open exchange, because that's all we can really do. We can't force somebody to believe something. So at one point in the interview, you may have seen in the captions, I called it out. I definitely triggered a shame response in regards to the statistic that the vast majority of farming in the UK winds up at places like we're on the screens we were watching. The first time I brought it up, I could tell he was visibly uncomfortable with this suggestion, that he could have been contributing to this his whole life. So when I brought up a different statistic, that he thought I was referring to the same one again, I was quite quick to try to move the conversation along, and fortunately we were able to bring it back to a positive place. So it goes to show that even if we feel something strongly, sometimes it helps to move to different topics that the person might be more open to. So at some points in the interview, and perhaps throughout, it may seem like I'm quite agreeable. I'm not doing this because I necessarily agree with what a person's saying, but what I am doing is trying to build a supportive environment where people feel like they can share, which I feel like worked quite well in this instance. Yeah, if you have any other thoughts, or there's something I missed, or you like what we're doing, or you just have an idea for something I could try in the future, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay, don't be, because I'm a bastard farmer.
Not at all, mate. Not at all.
You like peas? She did.
It is, yes.